Meeting will come to order. If you'll call the roll, please.
Commissioner Boyd, Amber Brown, Suzette Couples, Holly Deering, Brian Gaither, Mary Hickerson, Lois Miller, Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Phillips, Shantae Sherrill, Michael Smith, Steve Spence, Sonia Stevenson, Eric Tutobeni.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Before we get started, let me welcome Suzette Couples. Welcome. She's been appointed the Senior Benefit Specialist with Rutherford County Schools, and she joins this committee. So welcome, and we appreciate your insight and input. So thank you for joining us. Having said that, Madam Vice Chair, do we have minutes, and have you had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes, sir, I have.
Thank you.
I have reviewed the minutes, and I make a motion to approve as written.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a second from Ms. Lord. I'm used to Nate that. All those approving the minutes say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes stand approved. Next, Mr. Elam, we're talking about financials. Please, sir.
Yes, sir. For the month of March 2023, you had $3,391,237 in revenue. Expenditures, you had $2,674,823. Revenue less expenditures, you had a positive $716,414. The total for the year is $6,957,165 in revenue. Expenses, $11,169,776. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $4,212,611. And the fiscal year comparison, 2022-23, you have a total of $45,242,005 in revenue. Expenses, $52,207,964. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $6,965,959.
Any questions for Mr. Elam on the financial report?
I'm not done. I got it.
Well, excuse me.
Sorry.
Were you that?
So the 266 fund.
Thank you.
For the month of March, workers' comp, you have $916.07. OJI, you have $46,209.01. For the total month of March 2023, $47,125.08. Year to date, workers' comp, $1,358,957.31. OJI, $406,833.40. And the total for year to date, $1,765,790.71. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
My apologies for interrupting. Do we have any questions for Mr. Elam? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion and a second. Move to approve. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. So
Shantae.
Shantae, thank you. My apologies. You'll call the roll, please.
Sir. Commissioner Boyd, Amber Brown, Suzette Couples, Holly Deering, Brian Gaither, Mary Hickerson, Lois Miller, Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Shantae Sherrill, Michael Smith, Steve Spence, Sonia Stevenson, Eric Tutobeni.
Thank you. Motion finance director, financials from Ed Elam pass. We now have OSHA report. Mr. Elam.
Yes, sir. For the month of March 2023, You had an incident frequency, you had 22. Year-to-date, 71. OSHA log summary total recordable, 44. Lost day claims, 6. Restricted day claims, 29. Other recordables, 10. On-the-job injury claims, 2023, again, you had 71 compared to 46 in 22 and 49 in 2021. On-the-job injuries occurred for 2023, you had 268,000 compared to 2022, 160,000 compared to 2021, 190,000. And for the breakdown of the injuries, 14 was the Board of Ed, 8 was County General, 0 was Highway. And the County General, 2 was Sheriff, 2 was EMS, and 4 was Fire and Rescue. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Elam on OSHA report? Yes, ma'am. Mary, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just a question for a little research for an answer maybe next month. Looks like we have seen increase for each of the months of January, February, March over 21 and 22. Could we do a little research to see, are we getting people to better report? Or are we truly, are we truly having this many accidents, or are we actually getting people to report better than we have in the past? Does that make sense?
Yes, there's several factors there. One is there is better reporting. I do believe there's better education of the OJI program itself that requires them to report in a timely manner. The other thing, if I go back to the incurred dollars, there was a reevaluation on the incurred dollars. Everybody knows medical bills, expenses have gone up. So what, if someone reported a back injury, what it used to be 2021, 22 is a little bit different than what it is now. They've raised, if you say you've got a back injury, they'll just plug in a number. And then it may not be that number. You may have some physical therapy. You may not even have to have surgery. So in those incurred dollars, it's a higher amount than what it looks like. But then if you go back to the 266 fund, if you look at the OJI dollars under the 266 fund for 23 and 21, and if you look at those, you see where your workers' comp, these are the actual dollars paid. So the incurred dollars, I want to compliment my staff, because the incurred dollars is what an average person says what this claim has the potential of costing. The staff works very hard in trying to reach out to that employee, making sure if there's an MRI, and to cut down on any indemnity payments and get them back to work as quickly as they can. They also work with them on their restrictions. And I will also compliment the directors and elected officials. We're now getting people back, even though the incurred dollars may say this is the average for anybody that has that type of an injury. We're doing, I think they're doing a good job getting them back to work, trying to work with the director, the elected officials, and saying, do you have some restricted work? And quite honestly, the injured employee loves to go back to work. I mean, they do not like sitting at home. And if you can give them some restricted work, they're more than happy to. So Jane and Susan both have worked diligently trying to make all that happen. And so that's where you see here. The number of injuries, yes, is higher than what I would like to see and would not like to see an uptick. Part of that is the COVID time. You had people not here during COVID time, so that's a little bit of an uptick. But going back to the 266 fund, we're still, compared to the state incident rate, we're still in good shape, below average. But again, I don't like the uptick. And I mentioned to Public Safety Committee, Susan Thompson in our office is one class away from being able to teach the OSHA 10-hour class for Rutherford County. And so we're going to reach out to several elected officials and departments that we feel like that we can address some of these claims. And then the last thing I would say is that anytime you add additional employees, and there's been a lot of additional employees, you have more hours. So when you look at it on a percentage basis, it's not as much as you really think it is. But your highest number of people, claims that you have, are people that have worked with an employer, I think, less than 2 or 3 years. So with all these new people coming in, and a lot of training and stuff like that, that also would lead to that number.
Any other questions for Mr. Elam regarding the OSHA report? Seeing none, we'll take a motion in a second. A motion from Mary, second. Second from Steve Spence. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Report is passed by acclamation. Next on the agenda is our wellness update from Ms. Liz Lovett with Cigna Wellness Coordinator. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Sorry. So for our report today, per your request, Ms. Hickerson, you had asked that I pull out Board of Ed. So we had something to compare with where we're at this year as to last year. So I did that. And so for the month of April, in last year, April 2022, we had got to 301 participants who had completed all of their points. And compared to April of this year, we are at 321. So we're doing a little better right now. I want to say, based off all of the breakdown of the breakdown of all the different incentive points you can get, you can see the higher one we have right now is where the biometrics were, and that is because we promoted a new campaign this year that we haven't had before earlier in the year for biometrics in February. So that is good to see that has brought our numbers up. Especially something else to consider is we have a new demographic, obviously a reduced demographic population, and if we're pulling those numbers plus higher at this point, that's looking good, and I still have higher goals to even produce better than last year's moving forward. So that's where we're at with that. And then moving on to our current and upcoming activities. As I always tell you, we have this monthly podcast. The numbers are improving on that, and it's just got all the dimensions of health, and it's going, really well, and just letting your employees know all the benefits and programs that are available to them. We have one more week left. This is our last week of our wellness challenge for the second quarter. That's going really well, and I've had a lot of good feedback from that. Every week they have to fill out a survey about what they're doing, and it's some great feedback. Along with that, I promoted moving more with physical activity, so I offered 3 new avenues that they could do to be more physical and do different classes, and got great feedback from that. We just finished our last one yesterday with a great group lunch walk starting here to the Oakland Mansion, and that was really well. So good feedback and good participation. And moving forward, our next activity we have coming up is a financial health lunch and learn. So I'm looking forward to that. That's part of one of the things they had to learn about in their challenge this quarter. That would conclude my report. Does anyone have any questions?
It appears not.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next, we have MedPoint, Beth Wilson, Manager of Business Operations. Don't you just love doing this?
Afternoon. If you will turn to page 3, we'll begin the review of the visit summary analysis for the MedPoint Clinic at New Salem. Under the visit summary, we saw 216 visits in March. with unique members being 158, or 73% of those visits. That was an increase of 48 visits and an increase of 16 unique members from the February numbers. And if you look at the graph to the right of it, you can see that we're showing a steady climb in visits. On page 4, the visit summary by member type, 12% of the visits were member type child, with 75% employee, and 12.5% were spouse. We continue to see an increase of each member type month over month, which is encouraging. Page 5, the visit appointment type summary. 42 members had more than one visit in the month of March. One member had 8 visits, and 41 had 2 to 3 visits. Those were for multiple health reasons. If you look at the graph to the right, you'll see that the established patient visits are up at 133. February had 117. The annual visits are up from February. March has 22, and there were 16 in February. New patient visits are up from February at 20. February had 9. This is also encouraging. So the visit summary by day, there were 20 scheduling days, with Wednesday being the busiest day of the month, which is exactly how the numbers fell out in February. Page 7 are in-person versus virtual appointments. There were a total of 7 virtual appointments in the month of March. That's up 4 appointments or 4 visits from February. And then the next page is a comparison of in-person versus virtual appointments. The in-person continue to hold the largest percentage over virtual, which we like to see. Page 9, the referral summary. We had a total of 25 referrals for the month of March. The top referral was for physical therapy, and that's the first time that physical therapy has hit our top referrals, with urology, ophthalmology, neurology, and gastroenterology following those. If you will turn to page 11, the financial report for March, again, we had a total of 158 unique members, with a total operating cost of $57,382.70. The employee count was 1,938, which left us with a PEPM of $30. This increase was due to catch-up payments for lab bills for both the Stewart's Creek and the Walter Hill clinics. I believe that Amber touched on that last month when she gave a report. Page 13, our population health analysis. Our BMI summary, female highest percentage BMI was in the obese class. The male highest BMI is in the overweight category. Page 14, the diagnosis codes. Encounter for general medical exam, sinusitis, pharyngitis, bronchitis were in the top 2. If you'll remember from February, those both held the same numbers, or they were the top 2. It's just flipped this month, which is very encouraging, because now the encounter for general adult medical exam is the top diagnosis code. That showed an increase from February's 13.27%, and we now stand at 27.31%. And then if you'll turn to page 15, the visit demographic summary, 55.92% of the members seen were female. So we're still trying to close in on that gap of 50% male and 50% female. The female age range was 40 to 49, and the male age range 50 to 59 were in the highest population seen. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? I reckon not. Thank you very much. The last thing on our agenda is Property and Casualty 2324. Mr. Elam.
First of all, Mr. Chairman, let me apologize. This information got out rather late to the members today. One of the things, when we put out information, we want to make sure it's accurate and correct. And we were receiving information all the way up to, well, a little bit this morning. Let me give you just a little bit of details so you can kind of understand what this bid represents. And I'm just going to round off the numbers for you. But there's approximately 385 buildings in Rutherford, owned by Rutherford County or in Rutherford County that we take care of. We either have it leased or we're a leaseor or they're owned, and we occupy them ourselves. That totals a little bit over $2 billion is what the value of the value of the buildings are. The contents is close to $160 million. Vehicles, over 750 vehicles with the county. And also keep in mind, we have, and this has to do with our risk that we have for Rutherford County, we have over 7 locations that there's more than $1 million in that location. And what that means is, like, if you were to take Blackman High School, Blackman Middle, Blackman Elementary, EMS station, and put all that together, you're looking at your risk like if a tornado hit, you had some type of damage in that area, your risk is higher than if you were in a more rural county where you're looking at, where you don't have all of those schools in one location and condensed in a county as much as we do with the number of buildings that we have. So that being said, the bids were opened, and if you don't mind, I would like to ask Janet Bowman to come up, and she will give you the information on the bids.
Without objection.
Mr. Elam, good afternoon. I think everyone has in their packet. We'll start off with kind of the exposures, if you don't mind. When looking at the property, as Mr. Elam referenced, you'll see the first page. The county building values expiring was $305,803,952. The renewal was at $357,088,447. So you've got a $51,284,495 difference there. On the contents, you see the expiring for the county at $53,138,769. The renewal is at $56,274,863 for a $3,136,94 difference. When you get to the schools, you've got the expiring at $1,393,106,895. The renewal is at $1,603,385,759. So you've got $210,278,864 increase there. On the contents, for the schools, you've got $94,405,772 for expiring. The renewal is at $110,519,300. So you got a $16,113,528 difference there. When we're getting into the fleet for the vehicles, the physical damage amount was $45,002,417 for expiring. The renewal is at $49,467,200. So you've got a $4,464,783 difference there. If you look at the expiring, the total insured values, when we're looking at the property, your expiring numbers were at $1,891,457,805. The renewal is at $2,176,735,569. So there's a difference of $285,277,764 increase on the property. We really blanketed the markets. Mr. Elam and his department, we talked about all the different markets that we went to. We actually went to 31 different markets to quote the renewal. There's about 3 to 4 different property markets that will look at governmental entities. You've got markets out there that will look at commercial type risk, private sector type risk, but when you get into governmental, it's a little bit different animal. Your expiring carrier, this is on page 2, was Liberty Mutual. Liberty Mutual had sent in a non-renewal notice back to the county probably about 60 to 90 days out. Then they came back and said, you know what, we will offer renewal terms, but we're going to cap it at a $10 million limit, which really doesn't help the county or schools at all. We said, okay, let's see what the numbers are. We started kind of scurrying to get some reinsurance and some excess layering on top of their quote. The bids were open. They never presented even a renewal indication. So Liberty Mutual was out in that regard. Travelers, who used to be on the account for the property years back, 2018, 2019, they did come in. We were a little nervous, to be honest with you, if they were going to come in because of treaty negotiations that they do on the back end, because they're not actually taking in all the risk. They're layering it as well. Travelers did come in and quote the renewal at the limit that we had it expiring, the $250 million, with $100,000 retention. And you'll see that the difference there in the premium is pretty substantial. I'm not going to say that that's something that we're really that pleased with, but by the same token, like I said, we went out to 31 different markets and we received basically the traveler's quote. Now, I will say this, I know we're past the bid date. I know the insurance renews 7/1. We are continuing to work behind the scenes. We talk daily with Mr. Elam's department, and we're still looking at other options just to see what we could do. I know that decision has to be made on the insurance, but there again, I think this helps prepare us for the years to come. So we have actually got Lloyd's looking at it too, and they had looked at it initially on the front end, and Lloyd's had told us that 7/1 of this year, they may be out of capacity, which I can tell you I've been in this business 38 years, and I've never heard Lloyd's being out of capacity. And if that does happen, 7/1, you will see a domino effect across the world, basically, in the insurance industry. So they have now come back in and said that they would look at possibly layering and taking some layers. Liberty Mutual did finally come back in after the bids were open. They presented their $10 million limit at a premium of $1.3 million for the $10 million, and they increased the retention from $100,000 to $500,000. So we are, like I said, going back and continuing to look at some options, just to let you know, and if nothing else, for the future. So you'll see the premiums there, the expiring premium at the $1,121,989, and then you'll see the renewal premium from Travelers at the $2,392,402. The next page goes into the casualty coverages. These are pretty much the same across the board. You'll see Princeton is your current carrier. You'll see the coverages there on the left side, the general liability, public officials, employment practices, educators, legal, auto liability, auto physical damage, your sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and the crime coverage. And then you drop on down to the law enforcement excess and the surety bond. You can see the carriers there in the next column, from Princeton to Hanover to Travelers. And again, these are the same carriers with the exception of the Hanover on the auto physical damage. Right now, your expiring limit is $975,000 with the $25,000 deductible, which is included in the premium that you see outlined. And then we've quoted an option with Hanover for a $25 million limit with the $25,000 deductible, and you'll see to the far right column that premium at the $109,916. That's quoted for an option there. The crime coverage, you'll see the premium, expiring premium is $5,642. The renewal premium to the far right is $5,658. Coverages and everything are in line with exactly what expiring was. Same thing with the law enforcement, the $2 million with the $500,000 retention, and then you've got the excess liability at the $3 million, bringing that up to a $5 million on the law enforcement. And you can see the premiums there. The expiring is in that fourth column from the left, and then the renewal premiums are in the far right column. The next page goes into the accident for the fire department. This is the accident policy. It's with Provident or Axis. Basically, same limits exactly as it was at expiring. You'll see the expiring premium was $3,132. The renewal premium is $4,182. You'll also see at the very bottom, there's two options to increase the overall limits for the death benefits at $75,000. You'll see the premiums there, and then they also quoted an option of $100,000. I think the program, when it started out years back, was at $25,000, and several years ago, I believe that the commission voted to raise that to the $50,000 limit. I think that's adequate. The next page goes into your medical malpractice. This is for the health department, for the general dentist there. The company is Admiral Insurance Company. That's your expiring company. It's been with them since day one. The limits are the exact same. The retention is the exact same from expiring $1 million, each occurrence $3 million aggregate, and $2,500 per claim retention. Premium is exactly as it was at expiring, the $6,245. The next page goes into your cyber liability. I know there was some concerns from Mr. Elam and his group with regards to the cyber liability, so we've got a lot of different quotes that we're bringing in on that. Your current carrier is Cowbell. Their expiring is $1 million with $100,000 retention. You'll see the premium at $68,596 expiring. Their renewal premium with the same limits and retention is at $73,919. Then you'll see there to the right of that, we also received a quote from Homeland Insurance Company, and all of these companies are A-rated, I will add that. They quoted $1 million limit. They quoted a $250,000 retention, and they quoted a premium of $55,000. The next quote was Homesite Insurance Company. They quoted a $5 million limit with a $250,000 retention, and then at $149,342, you'll see to the right of that, they also quoted an excess to stand above the primary. That would bring those limits up to a total of $10 million if the county so opted to do that. You'll see the premium there at the $135.40. And then we had a quote from Crum & Forster with a $5 million limit, a $250,000 retention at $163,372.
Yeah, you can if you want to.
Okay. All right. Then the last portion is just kind of what we've laid out, just to, again, to kind of compare apples to apples. And the far right is pretty much the recommendations, staying with or going with Travelers on the property, Princeton on the casualty lines. You'll see the optional quote for the Hanover numbers there, about center of the page. And then Travelers on the crime coverage, Cowbell on the renewal. I don't feel like with the increased retention, even though on the cyber liability, the premium was lower with Homeland at $55,000 versus the $73,000. The retention is $250,000 versus $100,000. I don't think there's enough savings there to offset that. So the recommendation would be to go with Cowbell at this, with the renewal at $73,919. Admiral on the dental medical professional at $6,245, and then you've got your accident coverage with the volunteer firefighters at the $4,182. And then the workers' comp surety bond in there, that's a continuous policy through Safety National. It's at a $500,000 coverage with a $5,000 premium. It's been that since day one, and it's a $5,000 renewal.
My apologies, Sonia, you're recognized.
I thought you were ignoring me. I'm teasing. So I have a question on the Axis insurance. Is this, and this may be a question for Ed instead of you, but whichever one of you knows, is this in addition to or in place of the existing life insurance policy that the county provides for all of our employees?
Yeah, it would be in addition to.
Okay, then my next question is, and then you might want to add on to it. So if I understand correctly, our policy that we provide all of our employees, the $35,000 that we provide all our employees, if there was an accident while you're an active employee during the course of your job, whatever your job is, if you lost your life, then there was you were paid additional for that. So that means that for a firefighter, they would get this policy plus double on their other life insurance as well if they were to lose their life during?
Yeah, I can speak for this policy. This policy, yes, it would actually pay out the death benefit as long as, like you said, if they were operating within the scope of their duty, it would actually pay a death benefit of $50,000. Correct.
Can I add to this? With the volunteer firefighters, they have their own policy. Then you have volunteers for Rutherford County Fire and Rescue. So this there was my understanding this was put into place before I came in, but the way it was explained to me was also that set of volunteers that volunteer for Rutherford County Fire and Rescue, there wasn't a policy to cover them like the volunteer departments had for their own people. So this was added also for those volunteer firefighters for the county.
So it's only the volunteers. It's not all.
Oh, it's both.
Not.
It's
It's
both.
both.
It's
Okay,
both.
so the paid firefighters are getting double the insurance that everybody else. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was hearing that right.
Mike Smith, you're recognized.
On the cyber liability, we had a quote that came in at 55 versus the renewal at 73. I don't see the savings because at the end of the day, when I look at historically, I mean that's a risk, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the savings, if we're going to have a cyber claim, I would assume it's going to be over 250,000 or 100,000 anyways.
I agree.
So I guess my recommendation would be for the 55, just based on the risk of the county, based on knowing our finances. If we get a claim, it's going to be probably well in the millions anyways, if we get hit with some type of ransomware or something like that. And then I look at historically what we've paid out in ransomware, which is zero. So I think it's a little different than, like, to me, if that was a stop-loss policy on medical, I think then 100%, would be correct because we're hitting, one or two people are hitting stop-loss every year. But on this, I guess I don't really see the savings. I do see an immediate savings of, the premium. But then when I look at historically over the last 30 years,
Right,
we've never hit either retention amount.
exactly.
so I think that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and if I could, Jen, speak for just a second. It's, it doesn't really, to me, it could go either way with me, I don't care. It's just the retention and it's how much risk you want to assume. I mean, it's, we've changed it from time to time, and that's pretty much a decision, if this committee wants to do, that's fine with me.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation, subject to changing to, let me make sure I get the name right. Subject to changing to the Homeland Insurance Company for cyber for the total premium of $55,000.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Phillips. All those, you have a question, Mary. Why am I not surprised?
I have a question.
We love you, Mary, for the questions. We do. Go ahead.
And that makes sense. I mean, knock on wood, we've not had to pay up to $100,000 or $250,000. But Ms. Janet, can you give us any idea as to your thoughts as being the broker and seeing a whole big picture of everybody? And I don't mean this in any, please don't take any of this wrong, but is there something potentially wrong with Homeland Insurance Company? Or, because sometimes you get what you pay for.
Sure.
And cheap may not always be best. So
Right.
I just want your take or Ed's, anybody's take on, I mean, I'm good with it if we can save that money.
Right.
But I want to make sure that we're not short-sighting ourselves by going with the cheaper, because you do get what you pay for.
Right, yeah, and that's a good question. It's a good form. I've looked it over, I compared it with your current cowbell form. Coverages that are there, they obviously want the business. They came in and quoted it aggressive because they do want the business. To answer your question, you know, there is a little bit of risk if you move around and you don't like the coverage or something happens or whatever the case may be, just in the fact of going from one carrier to the other, because then if we ever try to get Cowbell to come back in, it's kind of like what we're dealing with on the property with Travelers. I know that Liberty came in before and quoted competitive, and that's the reason, and I get it, it's all about the mighty dollar, you know, and I understand the need to move it, but now when we go back to Travelers, we see what the outcome is as well. So that would be the only risk in my opinion. But the form is good. It's very comparable to what you currently have now, just the higher retention.
Yeah, Director Elam, you're recognized.
Ms. Cook, can you give me a little bit of or for the committee's information, your interaction with Homeland Insurance and their cyber policy?
We've quoted them on several occasions, but we don't currently have any business with them right now. We have quoted them in the past, though, but typically they do quote the higher retentions, and a lot of times that's not as attractive to the buyer as it would be with the lower retentions.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Chairman Phillips. This is a roll call vote. If there are no other questions, we will call the roll. Oh.
Janet, you had mentioned that all of these carriers are A-rated carriers.
Yes, that is
And that's from a financial strength perspective.
That is correct.
What is your opinion from customer service perspective?
I think all of them are very solid. I can say this, that on all the cyber liability quotes, I know that had been a concern in the past of getting quotes late in the game for the renewal. We had the cyber liability quotes way ahead before anything else was quoted. All the other carriers, like I said, the only one that was a little bit holding out to the very last was Travelers, and it was because they had to get their treaties in place on the backside. But as far as the service and the customer service and everything, with what we've worked with the carriers so far, it's been excellent.
We're not going to rush to a vote because Mary has another question.
Okay, this is a renewal. Is this renewal on the second year of the 3-year contract, or is this the first 12-month after the 3-year contract?
Mr. Elam?
These are all annual. They're not 3-year contracts or 3 + 1 + 1. This is bid out on an annual basis.
Anyone else? This is important, so we'll take our time. You're recognized. Yes.
How long have we been with Cowbell? Is this only just the first year with
I
this
think
carrier?
this is our second year.
Okay.
We're in our second year.
Thank you.
No further questions? Call the roll, please.
Amber Brown.
No.
Suzette Couples. Holly Deering. Brian Gaither. Mary Hickerson. Lois Miller. Commissioner McAdoo. Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Shantae Sherrill. Michael Smith. Steve Spence. Sonia Stevenson. Eric Tutobeni.
Motion passes 10-2. Mr. Elam?
Sir, I don't have any other business.
Is there any other business before the committee? Seeing none, we stand adjourned. Oh, by the way, our next meeting is May 25th. My apologies. Now we're adjourned.